She's known as Baby Veronica, and she was at the center of a high-profile custody battle. Her adoptive parents are white. Her father is Native American and has been fighting for her alongside his tribe. The case went all the way to the United States Supreme Court. At the heart of the case is the Indian Child Welfare Act, or ICWA, which mandates that every effort be made to keep Native children with their families or tribe. Congress passed ICWA in 1978 in response to an alarmingly high number of Native children being removed from their families and placed in non-Native homes, the tie to their cultures and communities severed in the process. 35 years later, the fundamental protections of the law are still being fought for.
The requirements of that act apply from the minute Indian parents and Indian kids walk into the courtroom, and it's just not happening.
Here in South Dakota, Native children are only 13% of the children in the state, but more than 50% of those in foster care. And the majority are placed with non-Native families in group homes or institutions.
We welcome you to beautiful Pine Ridge, South Dakota, where leaders are born.
For the Lakota people here, the issue isn't just about child custody. It's about cultural survival. In the southwest corner of South Dakota is the town of Rapid City. A federal class action lawsuit has been filed against officials here, alleging that the state routinely violates the Indian Child Welfare Act. I went to meet one of the mothers involved in the lawsuit, Madonna Papan.
Hi there.
Hey, how's it going, Madonna?
How's it going? Good. Nice to meet you. Come on in.
Yeah, thank you.
Something like this.
Okay, then don't eat it, baby. Not that part anyway.
Madonna's two children were taken into state custody 2 years ago. Her daughter was removed after Madonna's husband drove intoxicated with the young girl in the car. Dakota, her son, was at home with a sitter at the time.
My son had no reason to be taken, and they took him from me at school 2 days later. I requested to see him before they had taken him so I could talk to him and explain to him what was going to happen, and I didn't get that chance.
I was so frustrated. I said, okay, I'll go. I won't put up a fuss. So I just went.
Come on, Zappa. Come on, Zappa.
At the court hearing for Madonna's children, the judge ordered that they be kept in state custody for 60 days. The children were separated from each other and placed in non-Native foster homes. Dakota threatened to hurt himself and was moved to a mental health facility. When you made that threat, were you serious about it, or what were you
serious.
thinking?
I did not like it. I was so scared what was going to happen. I thought I was going to be away forever.
Only 11 years old at the time, Dakota was placed on risperidone, an antipsychotic, and transferred to an institution. South Dakota institutionalizes more children under 12 than any other state in the country.
They say they did it because they were trying to protect my children. Well, they didn't protect my children. They traumatized them.
You got the hiccups?
Madonna says the Department of Social Services never told her about her rights under ICWA. Instead, with help from an attorney, her tribe took over her case, and they returned custody of her children.
If it wasn't for ICWA, I don't think I would have gotten my kids back.
So where's she at right now? Is she with you?
Jolene Abaresk runs the ICWA office in Rapid City for her tribe, the Oglala Sioux.
Little ones?
She represents parents in court, fights to get cases transferred back to the tribe, and places children with Native foster families or kin. South Dakota removes children from their homes more frequently than almost any other state in the country.
My clients, they're so scared. Anytime they see a social worker, it's like seeing an officer, a police officer. It's not like, here's some social worker offering to help me and my family improve in some way. It's the immediate response is they're here to take my kids.
Jolene believes many of the removals could be avoided.
We've had grandmas who lived a block down the road who try to get their grandkids. Law enforcement calls DSS. If they just place with a relative, it can avoid so much. Once you get into that system, it's just so hard to get out because it's just one thing after another.
The crucial moment when a judge decides whether to hold children in custody comes during a hearing held 48 hours after a child is removed. The lawsuit against the state argues that parents aren't given a fair hearing, and children are being removed for unjustifiably long periods of time.
They have to give those parents a chance to present evidence in their own defense, a chance to fight the state's attempt to take their children away from them, and to do that in a meaningful, fair hearing in front of a judge who has not made up his mind that whatever DSS says goes.
Hannah contends that there is evidence presented at the hearings, but only from one side. Mark Varga was the state's attorney for Pennington County, and he's one of the officials named in the class action lawsuit. He's the only person from the state who agreed to speak with us. So I'm a layperson, and I hear, a police report or a report from a social worker being admitted into these 48-hour hearings, and I think evidence. Can you explain why that doesn't mean evidentiary hearing?
The 48-hour hearing under ICWA, according to the state Supreme Court, was designed to ensure that parents are on notice, that they know what's happening to them, and to make sure that they have the availability of counsel. It is not the place that you try the case.
They tell us this is not an adversarial proceeding. This is something we're all supposed to just go along with. From the Indian perspective, who sees this in terms of history, this is about as adversarial as it gets. When the state is trying to take their children, they're just following a historical tradition that started a long time ago.
Now for full disclosure, I'm Native from the Anishinaabe Nation. My dad and older relatives were taken from their families and put in residential schools in Canada, where the expressed intent was to kill the Indian and the child. My family here in South Dakota have lost children to the child welfare system. The stories in this episode of Fault Lines hit close to home. This is the Pine Ridge Reservation, home to the Oglala Lakota. It stretches for over 2 million acres across the southwestern corner of South Dakota. This land is home to a rich culture, but has also seen some of the darkest parts of Native American history. In the 1800s, the government began sending Native children from across the country to boarding schools, sometimes using armed police to remove them from their families.
Through the agencies of the government, they are being rapidly brought from their state of comparative savagery and barbarism to one of civilization.
Native American children were stripped of their culture and identity. Many suffered abuse in the schools. The assimilation policies continued. In the 1950s came the Indian Adoption Project. Native children were taken by social workers and missionaries and placed in white homes. By the time ICWA was passed, more than 25% of Native children had been removed from their families. Today, what Native Americans call historical trauma still casts a long shadow. We are in Kyle, a town on the reservation, and people are walking today against suicide, an all too common occurrence in a place with little industry and where more than 80% of the people are unemployed. The walk is led by the Sweetgrass Suicide Prevention Group.